Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to this next video lesson. We're going to be talking about the C++ repetition structure. Specifically, we're going to be talking about the break and the continue command. Let me switch over here to my graphics program to illustrate this. The way that the break statement works is if you are within a while statement, say for example, and if you encounter a break statement, the break will jump out of the while statement. So in this case, normally the while statement would loop over and over and over and over again. If this particular statement is true and you encounter a break, instead of doing one more iteration, you jump out of the while loop entirely. If you're working with the for loop, you would jump out of the for loop entirely. If you're dealing with a do while loop, then again, once you encounter the break statement, you would jump out. So that's how the break statement works. Let's take a look at an example in code. And let me see here. I think I commented this section out over here. This would be an example of the break. So let me just go ahead and uncomment this. And I'm going to put a comment for this next part right here, so that we can take a look at just this one part. So this is the part over here that I want to comment. All right, so this is the way it works out. I'm initializing a counter, declaring it as an integer. I want to obtain the user number. I'm going to ask the user to enter a positive integer. Now, after the user enters a positive integer, we're going to keep on displaying what the counter is, starting from 0. But notice what happens over here. We check to see if the counter is equal to 2. If the counter is equal to 2, then we break out of the while statement. Breaking out of the while statement means that we go over here and print, or send out rather, an end-else statement. Now, if counter is not equal to 2, then we just simply output the value of counter. So if I go ahead and click on the run and run this program, you'll notice over here it says to enter an integer. So let me enter 10. Well, notice that only 0 and 1 are displayed. Then it says press any key to continue. The reason why only 0 and 1 are entered or displayed is because of the following. If counter is equal to 0, then counter is less than 10 in this case. So 0 is less than 10. Therefore, is 0 equal to 2? No, it's not. So we're going to go to the else statement. It's going to print a 0. Counter is not going to go to 1. Is 1 less than 10? Yes. Is 1 equal to 2? No. So we send out the number 1. Increase the counter to 2. Is counter less than 10? Yes. Is counter equal to 2? Yeah, 2 is equal to 2. So we break. We break and we go out over here and we simply send out the value of the code, or an end-else statement, I should say, at the end of the line of, at the end of the output. Okay, so that's an example of how the break works. Now what I'm going to do is to comment this block of code out. So let's say over here, put a block statement or a block code statement over here and over here. All right, and then I'm going to remove this next part so that I can talk about continue. All right, now the way that continue works is as follows. First, let me go back over here to my graphics program and show you how this works out. So let me scroll down over here to this next illustration. So the way that continue works is as follows. Again, within a while statement, let's say that we encounter an if statement, and if this is true, it says continue. What continue does is it goes back for another iteration. It goes back to the beginning of the while statement. In other words, normally what would happen is we would execute this, and then we would execute this statement. But notice how this statement is completely bypassed because we've encountered a continue. So what continue says is, do not go to the rest of the code below. Rather, go back, continue back to the top of the while statement for another iteration. So in other words, we just keep on, every time we encounter continue, we just keep on going back to the top of the while statement, as opposed to finishing the rest of the code and then going back to the top of the while statement. Here's an example of what it looks like for a for statement. Here's an example of what it looks like for a do while statement. You encounter the continue, you go over here, you perform a test, and then you determine if whether or not you're going to do this over and over and over again. Okay, so that's what that looks like. Let's go back over here to our Visual Studio program and see how it works out in a C++ program. Again, I'm asking the user to enter a number. If that number if the counter, rather, that I'm going to establish as 0 is less than that number, then we're going to enter into the while statement. If the counter is equal to 2, then notice what I do. I establish counter as the same thing as the user number, and then I continue, which means it's going to go back to the top of the while statement. Okay. If that's not the case, then we're going to output the counter. All right, so let's say that I enter 10 again. Is the counter, which is 0, less than 10? Yes. All right. This is 0, so this is false. So if we go over here, we display the number 0. Counter now goes to 1. Is 1 less than 10? Yes. Is 1 equal to 2? No, it's not. So we go over here, we display the 1, and now we increment, and now this is 2. Is 2 less than 10? Yes. Is 2 equal to 2? Yes, it is. So now counter is equal to user number. So counter is now 10. We go to the continue statement. I don't execute this statement over here. Instead, after continue, I go back to the top of the while statement. Counter is now 10. Is 10 less than 10? No, it's not. This is a false statement, so we jump out of the program. So if I were to run this, and if I were to say, for example, that the user enters the number 10, press enter, notice again that 0 and 1 are displayed at the end of the program. Okay, so that's an example of how the continue and the break statement work inside of a C++ program. This is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.